I'd like to extend the welcomes we've already heard to you all today. My name's Anna. I work for Bloomberg Television, where I'm a presenter of one of their morning shows on Bloomberg TV, and I'm truly honoured to be here to be asked to moderate this discussion. How do we get 1 million more women working in STEM in the UK? 1 million more, because that takes us to 30% of the STEM workforce, and that is, I'm told, critical maths. So that's the reasoning behind that. I'm going to let the experts on the panel do the talking, and you guys as well, because we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves briefly at the beginning, and then we're going to really quickly open things up for whether it's questions or thoughts, observations, comments, anything that you feel you're burning to say about this subject. So I'm going to go and take my seat over the other side, and we'll start to introduce the panelists. Mark, if you want to kick things off, brief introductions, who people are, and some thoughts on the subject to get us started.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Richard. I'm Senior Vice President for Halliburton. STEM is very important to me because I do have an electrical engineering degree, got from Louisiana State University, hired on as a field engineer with Halliburton right out of college, and here I am 30 years later. So been around a long time. Halliburton's a company founded in 1919 by Earl P. Halliburton. And here we are almost 100 years later. We have 88,000 people working in over 80 countries around the globe and over 140 nationalities. So we service our clients in the upstream oil and gas industry in helping them solve their problems and solve their challenges. And that comes from the whole entire life cycle of the reservoir. We're able to manage geological data during the drilling and the formation evaluation, drilling and completing wells, and all the way up to the reservoir management at the end of the day. Why is it important, the diversity, gender, in our organization? You know, when we deepen the diversity across our organization, whether that diversity is in gender, whether that diversity is in cultures, and whether diversity is in ethnic groups, you know, we're able to innovate a lot more. It gives us a discrete competitive advantage that keeps us as one of the leading oil and gas service companies in the entire world. At Halliburton, you know, but how we do it is to make sure that we're able to continue to mold and shape our future engineers and our employees. So the company has several programs to be able to help us do that as we go forward, particularly as it comes to diversity and gender diversity. But we need to be able to start at a very young age. We have a youth outreach program in which we partner up with many schools, many universities around the globe, where we're able to take our employees and partner up with these schools to go out and teach and show these youngsters on what science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is all about, and what careers they can have as they grow up throughout their education. One example of that is Introduce a Girl to Engineering. Introduce a Girl to Engineering is a program that we do just what I said, that we've utilized as early as 7 years old. We partnered up with the University of Texas one day. We had over 700 volunteers, not only Halliburton, but in the oil and gas industry. We had 2,000 middle and elementary school children that showed up at the University of Texas in Austin, and we were able to show them, give them seminars, talk to them, to show them the different roles and that they could play to guide them on their future education. We had games, engineering-type games, which they enjoyed immensely, but it was very, very successful, and again, showing them that STEM disciplines is a way to go for the genders. Another example of that we did one similar, actually it was in Nigeria. We teamed up with the Montessori International School, where we had senior female Halliburton technical professionals to be able to speak to sophomore age high school students and talk about how the oil and gas industry is not just a male industry anymore. We need all disciplines, all genders, all cultures to be able to keep that competitive edge and show them that the oil and gas industry is cool and that you can actually make a very good living as a female in the organization. When we move out to the university level, university outreach, we partner up with many of the different student chapters, women of engineering, for example, women in SET, science, engineering, and technologies, and have very many disciplines and series of development series that will actually go out to the campuses and have workshops to be able to help them develop a lot more of the soft skills necessary to be successful in the oil and gas industry, such as teamwork, leadership, etiquette. We'll have panel discussions. And yes, at one time, we actually had a fashion show. Because if you think of the oil and gas industry, a lot of females first think of men in coveralls. Not very appealing. Well, we've actually engineered coveralls to fit better on the women's side than just a one-size-fits-all, as you kind of have that picture in your mind. Very successful.
I'm sure the men at Halliburton hate that.
Oh. With that said, it's really enabled us to really start at a very, very young level and being able to teach the women of the world that the oil and gas industry is not a male-only industry. That we have to be able to bring in diversity, to be able to create the innovation that we need to be successful again.
Mark, thank you very much for getting us started, and we'll carry on around the panel just so we have as much time as possible for questions. Let's move on. Graham, if you take us to Rolls-Royce.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, my name is Graham Hopkins, and in the spirit of what we heard upstairs, what am I? I'm a Rolls-Royce engineer. What do? I design jet engines. Couldn't be better, could it? Couldn't be better. I've worked there 35 years. And why is this important to us? The answer is really simple. Talent pipeline. All right? We need a good, strong talent pipeline of engineers, because clearly we employ by far the best engineers in the world, because our products are by far the best in the world, and we are the greatest engineering company in the world. So therefore, we need a superb talent pipeline, and there just isn't enough if they just come from one side of the gender diversity. Simple. That's why we've got to do it. Now, we started this quite a while ago, and we have, I have to say, done, I think, an enormous amount, but there's always, always more to do. If we look at our current percentage of females in our engineering population, it is around 10%, which actually, in a sense, step one of our plan, because that marries the current percentage of females who come out of university in the United Kingdom with a STEM-type degree. So we've met step one, if you like. What's internal equals what's coming out. So step two is how do we get more coming out in the first place so that we have access to that talent pipeline. And I'm talking primarily UK here. Well, we've done a number of things to do about that, and I just want to cover three areas about how we do that. The first thing that we've found from all the work that we do on this is, and I think it came out upstairs in the report, we have to get in early. We have to get in towards the back end of primary school in order to get people interested in this. So one of the things we try and do there is we have, in a sense, for want of a better expression, a governors club in Rolls-Royce. We have over 300 school governors who they're allowed time off to do their governorship, and we fully support them in doing it. And we also, sounds terrible, sounds like indoctrination, but we tell them what to say. We tell them what to say in the schools in order to get things like don't have bad timetables so that you can't do maths and physics at the same time, or you know, the preconceptions about that. So we try to influence schools through the governors. We have over 1,000 STEM ambassadors. Again, we give them time to do that STEM ambassadorship, going out to schools, maths and reading buddies, to try and help that area. And that's very, very important as well. Secondly, in the second sort of tranche of that, influence the teachers. And we are joined up with the teaching profession to try and get them interested in science. We do the Science Prize, as you're probably aware, Rolls-Royce Science Prize, to get the teachers interested as well. And then the third bit is influence government. We must influence government because while they still maintain schools all driven by results, we're not going to get people, in a sense, trying it out, for want of a better expression, because they're prevented from doing certain things because the results might not be enough. We have to influence government. So we have a broad front of activity to try and get this moving forward because, as I said, for the simple fact, we have to have a strong talent pipeline. That's why we're doing it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Trudy.
Well, I'm a girl from Swansea. I'm one of 8 children, and we didn't have a very wealthy background, let's put it that way. And I alighted on the technology industry because back in the 80s, early 80s, when I was looking for work, there was no work in Wales. And I came down the M4 on a long elastic, or so I thought, thinking I'd always go back to Swansea. And I happened to alight on a burgeoning industry called technology. And they were looking for anybody. They'd take anybody. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not even an engineer, but I entered a technology industry as an accountant. And my thought process was, well, accountants earn a bit of money, so I'll get my money that way. Now, I was really lucky because I had managers who encouraged me, developed me, sometimes from a self-serving reason because the business needed it. And all of a sudden they said, Trudy, you're good at this stuff. You're good at interacting with customers. You're good at inspiring others. Why don't you join the main line? And that's what I did. And now I work for Microsoft. I've been in the technology industry for 30 years. I better say that quickly. And why I engage with WISE, I'm the chair of WISE, is because I was lucky. And I want every girl to have the choice that I had. If I may be so rude, I earn a good salary. I can provide for my family. I travel the world. I am in such an exciting industry. I've brought my phone out here. For a day job, I work with governments, with hospitals, with fire brigades, with the Transport for London, and tell me this doesn't make your life better. It's fabulous. So tell me what the downside is. I've got 3 children. I'm married to the same person for 30 years. So it's not that I've sold, some people say that, do you have to choose one or the other? No, you can do the both and have a really good time. So that's why I do it. In terms of Great Britain PLC, you heard earlier from Jane and from Avril, we desperately need these talents so that we are great. We are the great in Great Britain. So we can offer potential jobs to girls. They benefit, companies benefit, and the country benefits. So I'm looking forward to today's panel.
Thanks, Trudy. Imran.
Hi, my name's Imran Khan. I run something called the British Science Association. It's an organisation that's founded all the way back in 1831. And for all that time, we've been trying to break down the barriers that divide science from the rest of society and the rest of culture. And when I say science, just to make it absolutely clear, I mean science in all of its forms. I mean science, engineering, maths, technology, the social sciences, the whole gamut. So I'm just not going to spell that out every time I say science. I'm going to say 3 things and then expand on them a bit, but there's basically 3 messages I've got that I'm going to say now and then repeat at the end of this short set of remarks. One is that if we want to get more girls into science, it's not about changing the girls, it's about changing the science. We need to make science more accessible to everyone. The second is we already know how to do this. There are tons of reports. I think the one that Avril's produced that we've seen today is a fantastic addition. The 2 of the ones that I feel that I pick up every kind of couple of months and think, why are we not implementing the recommendations here? The Aspires report that Louise Archer led at King's College London and the Science Girl reports that Anna Zakaria led independently. Those contain all the answers we need, and we've got this fantastic panel here today, and we'll tell you many of the things that we're doing well in our own organisations, but we'll forget some of the things that are going on. We won't have a complete list, but really, if there's one thing I'd recommend you do after this, go and pick up those 2 reports, go and read the executive summaries, and find someone who can help make this happen. And the third thing is that we at the British Science Association are doing many of the things to try and make this happen. So if you think you can support us, come and chat to me. I'd love to hear from you. So a bit more detail on all of those. One is that we have this idea in society at the moment that if you only study science or engineering or maths, if you want to be a scientist or an engineer or a mathematician, I think that's completely wrong. One of the things that leads to is a real disconnect in the perceptions that we want young people to have versus the ones they actually have. So we have this situation where girls are, for some reason, less likely than boys to self-identify as the kind of person who will go and become a scientist. And the data for that's really clear. It's in Aspires. We also have this situation where girls are less likely than boys to think that they're good enough to do science, i.e. the numbers of girls who take GCSE science and then go on to do A-levels is lower than the number of boys who do the same. And that's despite the fact that girls actually do better than boys at GCSE. It's really counterintuitive, but it's because of these perceptions around science that we've created in society that you only go and do them if you want to become a scientist. We need to get rid of that. We know from lots of studies that parents and teachers are two biggest influences on young people. So if we want to try and get that science capital problem solved, we need to reach those two groups. When a teacher or a parent isn't comfortable with science, if they don't think it's part of their identity, the chances are they're not going to be able to pass it on to their kids and their students. And I think the solution isn't then to say, well, we need to make sure that all parents and all teachers are scientists, because that's not going to happen. We need to make it so that everyone feels like they've got a sense of identity with science and a sense of approachability with science. And we at the association do lots of work with that. We run Science Week, we run the British Science Festival, we work with the media. But what I think is more relevant to this discussion, what I've been asked to talk about, is what happens in schools. And I think we need to take the message to teachers that you don't need to have actually studied science yourself to be an effective science teacher. And I think that's a bit controversial. I think it runs contrary to what a lot of people have said over the past few years. But if we wait for the day when every single person who's in a school is teaching science has been a scientist themselves and has then gone and become a teacher, we'll be waiting a very long time. We need to empower more people to feel like they can get across a sense of excitement and passion about science. And that's especially true in primary schools. You know, we've made great leaps over the past 10 years in getting more scientists into teaching at secondary level, but at primary level it's even harder. You know, we need to empower more people to have the same sense of curiosity about science that we want to pass on to young people. And there's lots of other ways we need to change the message as well. We still talk about the leaky pipeline. That assumes that we have this idea that if someone studies science or maths at school and then not gone to become a scientist and engineer, we've somehow lost them. We haven't lost them. They are now a person out there in society who's got an understanding of science and maths. Isn't that a great thing? We don't say that, oh, you know, that person studied English and they didn't become an English academic or a copywriter for an advertising company. What a failure. No, we had the same attitude with science. The wider message needs to be, and I think it's great the government are pushing this through the Your Life campaign, that it frankly doesn't matter what you want to do when you're at school. In fact, if someone tells you that when you're 15, you should know whether you want to be an engineer or not, they're the ones that have got a problem, not you. We need to make it so that you are empowered to go into study science and engineering if you want to at the end of your time at school. And the really interesting thing we need to get across is the message that science is interesting, valuable and open and keeps your options open. So that's the second thing I wanted to say. The third and last thing is about the curriculum. So the curriculum is still built around this idea that school science is for training future scientists and engineers. And again, that is wrong. The vast majority of people that study science at school aren't going to become scientists and engineers, and that's okay. What we should be doing is treating it as an opportunity to educate all members of society and make it possible for them to go into science and engineering if they want to. And what that means is turning it away from a thing where you just learn facts about science and more into something where you learn about the processes and the ideas of what science is.
Imran, thank you very much. Katherine.
Katherine Oliver, and I'm a principal at Bloomberg Associates, which is an international consultancy business for cities that was started by Mike Bloomberg earlier this year. Between 2002 and 2013, I served as Commissioner of Media and Entertainment under Mayor Mike Bloomberg in New York City. And the agency was part of economic development for the city of New York. And it consisted of three main divisions: the Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting, which was essentially the Film Commission, NYC Media, which was the city's public television channels. And we created in 2010 a new agency called NYC Digital and appointed the first ever chief digital officer anywhere in government on the planet. And we hired a young woman who was an entrepreneur, Rachel Hout, who came from the tech sector, from the startup community in New York City. And it was a really critical position at a critical time. Because our agency was part of economic development, we really were on the pulse of where the jobs were, where the opportunities were. And this really was an opportunity to send a signal out to New York and beyond that New York believed in the tech sector and really wanted to build it. And so I think that with Rachel's hiring, we really sent out a signal that that the importance of women in tech was very, very much front of mind. As we go now to different cities through Bloomberg Associates, this consultancy business, we're seeing firsthand more and more the need by cities to embrace technology and to create jobs and to make an investment not only for young women but also for minorities. And in my time in government, we really saw a change in technology, and we saw the need to really develop this. And we actually we coined the phrase STEAM instead of STEM. We wanted to put arts in the conversation because we really saw that as an inroad to inspire more people to get excited about science and technology. And as we worked in schools, we used filmmaking and the arts to kind of draw in the students, and it proved to be quite effective. But our approach was really looking at education and marketing. And I think that on the educational side, we created Digital Ready, which was a curriculum for K through 12 in the United States. So it was from age 5 through 18, that it was really teaching young people to have digital literacy in school. And we worked very closely with the New York City public school system on launching that curriculum. We also developed some high schools that focused on software engineering. And that there are about 10 of them that have such a curriculum, and that's for ages probably about 13 to 18. And then at the high end of the spectrum, of course, Cornell Technion, the Applied Sciences Engineering School, was announced during the Bloomberg administration, and that prompted NYU and Columbia to expand their engineering programs as well. On the marketing side, we felt that we needed to really raise the profile of the tech sector in New York City. So we created multimedia campaigns to promote the tech sector. And so we went out into the community and put the spotlight on startups. And we literally made poster children of these entrepreneurs and took photographs of them in their offices in Brooklyn and Queens and put it as part of a multimedia campaign on subway cars, in buses, and also online. And it told the story of entrepreneurs, and it was linked to a website that was sponsored by New York City government that had information about how to start your own company and how to promote it, and courses that you could take and how you could benefit from some of the incentives that local government offered. So it really helped foster and create a sense of community, but it also made it very approachable for these entrepreneurs and inspirational for young women. And one of our signature programs at the end of the administration was specifically looking at women and girls in tech. And we reached out to the tech community and found 20 tech companies, large and small, that over a one-week period hosted over 300 young girls at their offices and gave them tours and had their executives and their workers talk to the girls about opportunities in tech, things that they never thought existed. So, and it was just opening up their eyes and making it more approachable. And then in turn, that week, the technology companies actually went into the schools and spoke to the students there. So it really made it more approachable. There were some women and men from the tech companies that spoke to them, but I think they were trying to demystify that you don't have to be afraid about technology, and there are a lot of different opportunities. So if you were interested in fashion or film or food, that there were opportunities in tech as well. And then one of the other things that I think we should do a better job at is that I think that pop culture has really let us down. Because when we watch TV and films, we see that there are many women role models. Women are portrayed as doctors or lawyers or judges. But when we see the engineering community, it's usually the geeky man. And so I think that we really should be putting pressure on the media, pop culture, to show a different light and to really try to promote women as engineers. And I think that that would send a strong signal and help inspire a whole new generation.
You wonder whether the whole Shoreditch culture and this sort of the geek chic movement, whether that's really going to take hold. I saw some disappointing research on that front just recently, but anyway, we'll get into that, I'm sure. Let's open things up to the audience then. We've got some microphones which will be doing the rounds.
Kerry Dingle from the charity Worldbytes, filming you today from our Citizen TV project, Worldbytes. Quick things. I've heard all your thoughts are very inspiring, and evidently there's very, very different reasons behind why big companies or local government or whoever would want a better gender balance, and we all want it. But I've heard this buzzword a lot lately of unconscious bias. And I'd be interested to know from the panel, it does sound very conspiratorial to me. Does it really exist? You know, is it real? Is this a real obstacle? Love to know your thoughts. Second quick question. Within the field of neuroscience, and I don't think it's neuroscientists, but possibly neuropsychologists, there is a huge amount of what I would call neurobabble, which says that our brains are hardwired, male and female, in terms of what we do, our leanings. There is even teaching going on in UK schools saying that kids should be taught differently because we are differently wired. Is this real? Is this a future obstacle to us, to women, if we are supposedly so different? I'm not sure it's true.
I've got very quick thoughts on both of them.
Yeah.
The first, in terms of unconscious bias, yes, there's lots of research to say it is a real thing, it's really happening. I think there's a great study that from US academics a couple of years ago looking at name blinding job applications, and they found that the people who are judging those job applications, whether they're men or women, look more favourably upon male job applications unless all the job applications are blinded. So, as in name blind, so you can't tell from the name whether it's a man or a woman CV you're looking at. So it's a real phenomenon. We've seen it time and time again in different scenarios. And on the issue of the neuroscience and whether male and female brains are wired differently, I think it's a complex area. The data's still coming. The short answer, the answer which I think rings most true based on the evidence I've seen, is that yes, men and women's brains are different, but that's due to social differences in our society, in that when people are born, their brains are the same. And the reason that men's brains end up differently from women's brains is just the social conditioning that happens throughout our formative years. So it's the one thing that all neuroscience will tell you about the brain is it's plastic, it changes, and the way in which that changes is driven by society.
Just your first point around unconscious bias, I can't tell you how many times I've come across unconscious bias in the 30 years that I've been in technology. How many times, for example, I've been told to man up. I just think that's unacceptable. It suggests that I can't be firm, just unconsciously by the terminology. Girls are said to not do physics, or can't do physics, or can't do chemistry, can't do biology. Let me give you some facts. You said it earlier on, Imran, is that when girls do the sciences, they outperform the boys. Now, I don't believe that this is a race between girls and boys. I do want to get over this unconscious bias, however. Let's be clear. There are more medical graduates who are female, and we all know how difficult it is to get into the medical or veterinary disciplines. There are more girls that do it. So tell me, girls can't do science. It's just unacceptable. And that's the kind of unconscious bias that I've personally come across for too long. And I want to change it because, again, my experience is that most people don't step out to try and be awkward or controversial. They just don't know what they don't know. And that's part of what WISE is about, is creating the awareness and challenging the status quo to bring about positive change. I hope you know, this isn't about a chip on your shoulder. This is about what's good for the country, what's good for communities, what's good for companies who generate wealth, which then fund the social services, and it's good for communities and families and the girls and the boys themselves. Back to the neuro, and I would like to say my daughter is going into this area of neuroscience, and we constantly find out what we don't know, but we are finding out more and more. But I think that is a search that will go on forever. What's coming out is that it's more cultural than scientific. It's more the social ways that we engage than the hardwiring.
Okay. So fight against those who say otherwise.
I'm Jane Clark. I'm a chemist from Cambridge. And one of the things that concerns me is retention. And it's keeping, I mean, in Cambridge we can recruit women chemists. But then we lose them, and it's to do with it. The workplace I work in is sometimes a horrible, terrible, nasty, backbiting place. And we've heard nothing about retention today. We've heard nothing, and it's not about, yes, you can work part-time if you've got children. I mean, it's about a lot more than that. And I think that companies need to, and universities, I think we need to put a lot of effort into the culture of the workplace, not just recruiting people in and then treating them in a terrible way. So why wouldn't they move? I mean, they're sensible.
I'm sure there's plenty of examples here about changing cultures or confronting cultural norms within a very male environment and
sure.
trying to change mindsets.
Let me attack that a little bit. As you well know, the oil and gas industry in the past has really been classified or as a male-only industry. We've been down this road for a while. We're not nearly where we want to be, but we continue to make extreme progress. You know, when you look at the STEM disciplines and the females in our organization of Halliburton, we have a very comprehensive competency program that allows them to develop their skills, their technical skill sets and the application of the sciences that they've learned in the universities. But then we also have a PPR process, people performance results, that we're able to assess all of our employees on the leadership skills, the soft skills that they have to really become leaders in the organization and move up through the organization, and not just totally based on their technical skills. Technical skills can be taught. I think some leadership qualities in people, that's something that we all have within us. And we need to be able to we recognize those leadership qualities, those soft skill sets, and from then we're able to develop a development plan for that person to put him through either mentoring, formal education, etc., to be able to develop those even greater to move up through the organization as they get identified through our succession management program.
I'd just like to tell you a bit about one of the things we're doing in Rolls-Royce about what you described there. It's a program called High Performance Culture, and it's aimed at everybody. And it's really about, if I could sum it up in one word, it's humility. And it's about getting leaders, because it has to come from the top down, and it really is about humility, and it's about getting leaders actually talking about themselves. And this is really hard for men. I'm not joking. I can bore for England talking about jet engines, but you ask me about, people I love and my family life, it's, you clam up, don't you? So we are driving people through this high-performance culture about humility and about recognising that you cannot be good at everything as a leader. You need to rely on a team. And once you get over that bit and you realise that you have to be a part of a team to be really good at what you're trying to achieve, we find that unconscious bias, which, let's not forget, 10 years ago was very conscious bias, has moved a little bit into unconscious, and now is coming back to conscious of the bias, but not necessarily being biased anymore. And I think some of these programs about how the traditional, if you like, environment that a lot of engineering companies had, Rolls-Royce, Derby, Midlands, Paternal, we've had to really change. And I think programs like that begin to change those environments. And I think, so again, it's part of a broad front of activities that you have to put in place. It's not just about how do we get women in there, it's how you change the men in those organisations to accept that. And so that's just one of the things we're doing.
Bloomberg is known as a media company, as a financial data company, but at its core, it's a technology company. And, founded by Mike Bloomberg, the ultimate entrepreneur, the tech geek who built the box in his garage and was extremely successful. And now we're excited that he's coming back to the company to run the company. And teamwork, innovation has been at the core of Bloomberg, collaboration. We're so proud Christine Flounders runs the R&D department in London. She has 400 people working for her. We have R&D departments in several cities around the world, but she's just a great example of great leadership. She's developing the staff here, and she's keeping the guys on their toes in San Francisco and New York. But it's a great way for her to develop the team. Bloomberg is also very philanthropic, and so a lot of our programming through philanthropy is designed to support educational initiatives in key cities. And now what we're launching is to do more work in R&D, where we can work with giving back, teaching kids about coding, building robots at the companies in different cities, and allowing the R&D teams to also bond outside of the office, but giving back in a way to their community where they can experience a lot of pride and satisfaction.
And you think that helps to retain people?
Absolutely, because it builds camaraderie. You're not just there in the office for 8 or 10 hours a day focusing on your job, but you're going with a colleague after work or on a weekend to give back to your community, to make a further investment to help young people about the craft.
Okay.
So what would be your ideal portrayal of a woman in technology in the media, and what characteristics would you guys like to highlight?
Well, I mean, this new show, Silicon Valley, it's 5 guys that are in the valley, and where are the girls? And there are no girl engineers there. I mean, I haven't been watching it that closely, so we can only hope that they'll develop it. You look at the hit show Girls that is on HBO with Lena Dunham. How wonderful would it be if one of the characters, if there was a technology strand in some way, or somebody wanted to become a scientist or we should really, what I would do going forward is to try to really work with the showrunners and to really try to create some campaigns to promote the development of characters and storylines that are promoting technology. This season on the HBO show The Newsroom, the Olivia Munn character actually gets a Bloomberg terminal. She's rewarded for doing good work and gets a Bloomberg terminal. So we have some product placement in the show, but she's recognized that the financial data, the news information is the best on the Bloomberg, and she's been given that opportunity to use that tool. So subtle messaging through the media, I think, would help reinforce different role models and different opportunities for young women for different career paths.
And it strikes me that in the UK at the moment, Tech City is getting so much publicity. It's attracting so many young people I speak to are excited about that side of science and engineering and the possibility of, wow, I can really create my own apps. That's amazing. So, and there's so much work with Decoded going into schools. Is that being used enough, Imran? Do you think capitalising on that opportunity that it's sort of riding a crest of being so cool, and that would help to paint a different picture?
I think we're getting there, and we had this problem in the UK where up until literally just a few years ago, despite how central IT and tech were becoming to our economy, what was being taught in schools was ICT, and it's basically how do you use a version of Excel which is going to be obsolete by the time you finish school, never mind the time you start working. And now we're starting to get into this habit of saying, well, it's more about the principles of what is computer science, how can you use technology in lots of different fields, and I think the tech industry in the UK still has a long way to go to become more diverse itself. There's still the cult of the programmer, which we need to get past. But I think the examples that you raised were fantastic, because it's not just about having more science or tech shows on TV. It's about saying any shows, whether it's girls or whether it's something else, we need to show that science doesn't exist in some kind of silo, and all the the techies and the scientists can go live over there. It needs to be integrated into lots of different parts of our culture.
Trudy?
My thought is that we should show men and women in equal numbers on every spectrum of job in technology, to answer your question. So whether it's in R&D, whether it's in sales, whether it's in finance, whether it's in applied science, whatever, everything. Right? So we shouldn't limit it. That's the first thing to say. The second thing is that we really need to reach out to all media avenues to make sure that we're getting the message across. And we heard earlier on today from Jane that she saw a great L'Oreal ad in a women's magazine. I think that's fabulous. I think we need to do more of those kinds of things. We needed to do it in the boys' magazines as well. Right, so I think for us is to be aspirational, about be hit in with equal numbers, in equal context to get this message across. And each one of you has a role to play. Challenge the status quo. Ask, where are the women?
Right, another hand.
Hi, I'm Nina Skrupska. I'm a Chief Executive of the Renewable Energy Association, but I'm also on the board of WISE. And I'm just going back a little bit about the retention, because a large part of my career in 30 years in energy industry is about seeing a lot of very good women exit at middle management. And I'm pleased to promote a little bit the WISE side of things, the 10 steps for retention of women that was recently publicised by WISE, of many big, large companies all signing up to those 10 steps. And it's not pick and mix, it's all the 10 steps that have to be done. And that's usually the failure. Some companies do one of them, but they don't do all 10. And that's where successful companies do. But the other point that I want to make from a personal experience is waking up around about 38, 39 and realising, being in a large corporation, you have to be savvy about organisational politics. And this is politics with a little p. I now in my job deal with politics with a big P, lobbying the government for renewable energy. But politics with a little p is just about knowing how things are done around here. So it's not about saying go and play golf and then having or going to the men's loos and decisions are made there, because that's what happens in energy companies. Groups of my colleagues went into the loo and come out and they've already decided what the way forward is. You know, so that was a bit of an exclusion, maybe very obvious one. But it is about your choices. You have choices about how you engage with your colleagues and finding out, and then the power of the networks that you consciously choose, and be part of this network, because this network will revolutionise it.
But I think that's where mentors come in to kind of help young people, not just women, but men as well. You know, and I think that that's really important, and we're seeing that day in and day out. And after being away from Bloomberg for 12 years and going back to the company, there's just this desire to have some direction and nurturing and support, somebody to talk to. And there are a lot of young people that have been hired in new positions, and they don't know the culture of the company, so they're looking for some direction, but they just need someone to talk to. When I went to government, leaving Bloomberg, which, you know, it was a very different world, going and working for City Hall, where we had no money, very little resources. You know, you couldn't change employees' jobs because they have social service jobs, so you couldn't change their job descriptions. And I realized how spoiled we were in the private sector. But as a manager, I quickly realized that what people want is feedback. They want direction. They want to know, here's the plan, here's the mission for the agency, here are some goals, and they want to know how they're doing along the way. And so that was very telling to me, and it was a great lesson to learn in the public sector that I now take back to the private sector again and apply.
I was frightened of networks. So I put it out there because you might be frightened of networking. I was lucky enough to be sent on an executive course to Smith's College in the US. And it's a female-only college. It's pretty prestigious. And I didn't want to go because I thought it would be full of knitting patterns and cookery recipes. It was the last thing that it was. And it inspired me because actually there were plenty of women like me with similar ambitions, similar fears out there. So it was great. It was an affirmation. So embrace it, to your point, Nina. Things are done that way. Don't be frightened of them. The second anecdote I would give you is, to my surprise, when I did go to some of the networking, the political networking, people wanted to listen to me. The people in the networks don't have all the answers. And they're looking for somebody who might have an answer. So if you've got an answer, you're really welcome. And my experience is that on the feminine scales, we're pretty good at applying a knowledge. We can use it in this way, or we can solve a problem that way. Try it, right? Let me give you a challenge. Let me give you a takeaway. If there's a network that you're a little bit frightened of, know that somebody else was, but also know that somebody wants to listen to you, because I bet you that you've got something valuable. You wouldn't be here if you don't have something valuable to offer. So go do it, because it is important.
Hi, Anna Zakaria from Science Girls, so just jumping in on the network, plugging. Everybody here is welcome. We're an inclusive network of mostly women across the UK, and absolutely that. It's a peer support network. It's a place to be yourself, and coming back to what Avril was saying earlier about kind of however that is you define yourself. But I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased to hear the cultural aspects of the conversation, because I think this is where there's really a chance for a step change. Because the way that we would frame this problem is an issue of gender stereotypes and then stereotypes about the STEM sector. And it draws in all the talk about unconscious bias, because the real issue is that all these gendered expectations around us are so familiar to us that we don't see them anymore. Yeah. So part of the challenge is to make those things visible and to stop splitting people down gender lines, to start talking about people as individuals. So if you look at what motivates somebody to follow any path they care about, is if they've got the support. If it's in STEM, it's the science capital. If they feel confident, if they can see where they're going and what their options are, and if it's relevant to them. And I think the STEM sector can really step in by doing all of those things, showing the options better, breaking down those stereotypes by showing real people. So one of the things our network is really about is about getting people out there, men and women. You know, nobody ever says to a man, "Can you balance a career with a family?" You know, showing how men do that, and I think that. I think if we can start to really use the scientific community to break some of those stereotypes, if we don't do it, who's going to talk about neuroscience and gender brains? You know, this is our community, this is our responsibility to actually start getting out there and challenging those stereotypes. So if anybody's interested in helping us do that, we have a neurotrash campaign with Professor Gina Rippon, who's talking about the things that Imran spoke about plasticity and the social impact on how your brains develop. You know, if we change our society, we can change our brains back again too. Thank you.
That really reminds me of the point about politics, and that, you know, if you're in an organisation which does make all decisions in the gents' loos or over golf or over, you know, wine on the weekend, lots of people are going to do badly in that organisation. I do terribly in that organisation because I hate, you know, I can't stand the idea of golf. So it's not just a gendered issue. It's if we change these things, there'll be better organisations for all sorts of reasons. There are all sorts of drivers to do this, not just the girls and women in STEM issue.
Yeah, and we have numerous social groups within Halliburton that our young engineers, not only female but also males, can participate in across the globe. To be able to talk about these problems, talk about these issues, talk about the little P's in the politics and what they need to do to further develop their careers. Once a year, we have an event called the Halliburton Academy, where we bring 1,000 of our brightest engineers into, usually it's San Antonio, Texas, to be able to discuss business, discuss technology, to discuss customer solutions that we're going to provide on the upcoming year. However, 3 years ago, we broke that out because it was always the same old people every year. Managers here, managers there, good engineers here. It was always the same faces you saw year over year. Today, we make sure that 60% of that population is first-time attendees. 60% first-time attendees. And of those first-time attendees, 30% of them have to be female. So what that allows us to do is to bring everybody into one, talk the Halliburton message, but more importantly, network, network, network. Every executive within Halliburton is at that event for the entire week, all the way up to the CEO of the organization. And every one of us are very open in discussions, in networking with all of our employees. They get re-energized, they go back, they get back into their impact groups, they get back to their women in service groups, and able to take that message and spread it out and learn from it and make it much, much stronger.
Hi, Caroline Lowe from Network Rail. I first wanted to say, Trudy, I really resonated with your message when you introduced yourself. I similarly stumbled into engineering as somebody who liked maths and have had a great career, thoroughly enjoyable, you know, and I found it empowering as a woman. I have 2 daughters. One's chosen engineering, one hasn't. The reason why the one didn't choose engineering and some of the friends didn't choose science or engineering wasn't really because they didn't feel they could do it. They were bright girls. They were very capable. It was very much about it not being cool, and we've talked about that, but also not being encouraged in the home by the mothers to do that. I feel that if mothers knew that it could actually really provide their daughters the choices that they had never had, that's a very, very powerful message, and it could, you know, it could change things. But how do we get through to mums? How do we get through to mums based on the fact that within the schools, you know, we're not necessarily getting the STEM professionals we need in there, really providing, you know, excellent teaching and passion in those subjects. So how do we do it? How do we change things?
I mean, I think you're completely right that, that all the evidence agrees with what you've said, that you really need to get through to parents and get them to talk to their kids about what it is about, you know, not just go into science because you'll earn lots of money, but actually science is an important part of the way in which we think of ourselves. You know, we're the type of family that will watch science on TV or go to the science museum or appreciate what's happening in science in the news. I would contest that it's just about mums. I think, you know, dads have a really important role here as well. And if we just have mums talking to girls about science and just have dads talking to boys about science, then that's going to perpetuate some of the cultural barriers that we've already got. And I'm sure that's probably what you meant anyway. In terms of how we get through to them, there are millions of different ways. So again, I mentioned the Your Life campaign that's going on at the moment. That's particularly targeting teenagers, but actually one of the roles for that campaign is to make sure that everyone knows that you don't just take science and maths at school if you want to be a scientist or mathematician. So taking science and maths is about keeping your options open in the way that 20 or 30 years ago it might have been seen that doing the humanities was that role. Actually, nowadays, our economy is much more mixed. It's much more of a thing where you can't just be a scientist, you can't just be an engineer, you can't just be an artist. Everyone is having, you know, coders are having to learn about design, designers are having to learn how to code. You know, it's a much more mixed economy. So, yeah, I think it's about doing things through schools, definitely, and doing campaigns, but also having a wider cultural appreciation of the role science and engineering play in our society.
And I think taking some of what we've learned today and some of the facts that are in the report and ourselves, you know, promoting it on our own social media, but perhaps even strategically aligning with mommy bloggers or daddy bloggers and to get the word out there. And I think creating that buzz, and I think to try to create some kind of viral campaign in that community, whether it be through schools or just through moms organizations, that might be a way to do it, but to really use social media to scale it.
My name's Howard Relton. I've just recently retired from Air Products. And in retirement, I've been trying to be involved in helping to support this STEM campaign and STEM activities. And one of the things that I've discovered is that there are a huge number of people involved in trying to do this, whether it's individuals going into schools to talk about careers and all that sort of stuff. And there are a huge number of large organisations and medium-sized organisations that are driving this sort of work. But what strikes me is that there is very little joining all of their activities together, and that the sum of the whole should be greater than the parts, as it were. And I'm struggling for someone to explain to me who that is supposed to be. I have a projects background, so therefore, you know, if the project manager will do it himself, and that's, I think, what we're doing. We're doing it ourselves. But somewhere, if we could find a way of joining all of this up, you get a bigger bang for your buck. And one of the questions is that biz? Is that DFE? Is that government in inverted commas? Who do you think that is?
Okay, let's have some thoughts on that, and any final thoughts you have, and then we'll have to wrap up.
I think it's all of them, and I know that sounds a trite answer, but just bear with me for a moment. What I mean by that is it's back to what I said at the beginning about you need to have a broad front of attack on this. You know, let's be honest, trying to get biz to talk to the Department for Education, you know, it's difficult enough talking to themselves. So, you know, that's going to be difficult. So there's no doubt we're going to have effort from ourselves. But certainly organisations like the Royal Academy and DLG and what they're doing to try and bring together the engineering industry to help on that is a big thing like that. So I do agree with the spirit of what you're trying to say. Where's the effort? Is the effort worth trying to get all that aligned? Knowing government, that would be a lot of effort and not necessarily value-added activity. So I agree with what you're saying. I just think where the effort, we have to continue putting the effort in ourselves at the moment, because if we wait, we'll not get anywhere.
Yeah, and I have 3 girls. one of them has a STEM discipline, so I'm ahead of our 30% target. But with that said, I mean, as an organization, we're making tremendous progress. As an industry, we're joining together as an oil and gas industry and doing very, very well. One quick example of that is we opened up a high school in the city of Houston. It's called the Energy Institute High School. These are individuals that will come into the high school to really learn about the disciplines in the oil and gas industry using STEM-type disciplines as they move up to the university level. So we did it individually. We're doing it as an industry, and I think that's going to continue to blossom as a flower and do it all together, multiple industries, multiple countries, multiple areas around the globe. As we mature down this journey, it is a journey. It is a cultural change. You can't change cultures overnight. It takes quite some time to do so. So, where I grew up, my age group, all of our parents, all of my friends, all of their mothers stayed at home and raised kids. Today, that's evolving. So as we continue to evolve that and get more and more people into the working industry, particularly in STEM, then it goes from conscious to unconscious to it'll just go away. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take an effort, and we just can't stop.
Any other thoughts on that, and also any final thoughts, then we'll wrap up.
We have got many people who do a lot of good work, but in the words of Chicken Run, we need to get organised. And I sense you could help us. Yeah? Thank you. Anybody who can help us get organised, because if we collect, we've established just this year the WISE Alliance. It's not about WISE, it's about the mission, right? It's not about any organisation, it's not about your organisation, it's about the mission. And when all these organisations become defunct, we'll know we have done the job, and that's a sign of success. So my question to anybody and everybody, if you're interested in helping us get organised, we need your help. Otherwise, we'll be fragmented and we possibly could be here in 30 years' time. So please, thank you for putting your hand up. I think it's a perfect way to end the panel. But let's make sure it's the beginning of making a difference. Thank you very much.
I mean, I'll tell you why I agree with you and why I disagree with you. And the disagreement first is that I think you're completely right that it's very frustrating, and I feel that frustration as well. But I also think it's really valuable that not one organisation owns this agenda, and I think it's really fantastic that we've got companies coming here and saying that we're not doing this because BIS are forcing us to, or DFE are forcing us to. It's because we feel ownership of this problem. It's our problem as much as anyone else's, and as much as we've got to get better organised, we've got to maintain that sense of ownership. And where I agree with you is my sense of frustration. So my organisation runs a programme called the Crest Awards. It's a bit like Duke of Edinburgh's Awards, so kids get bronze, silver, gold awards for doing creative, independent, project-led work by themselves. We reach tens of thousands of kids every year, and what we find is, despite it's really well evaluated, gets kids into industry, gets kids its aspirations themselves as science improving, we really struggle to sell it to companies because it doesn't have glitzy events, it doesn't have huge gala dinners all the time. It's just a consistent thing that every year transfers tens of thousands of kids into thinking themselves as more like scientists. And one of the frustrations I have is how do we capture some of the passion and interest that we know organisations out there have into consistent schemes that are well established rather than one-off things which just happen once or twice a year and then perhaps fade after 2 or 3 years. That's a real frustration of mine.
Okay, Katherine, some final thoughts and then we really will wrap up.
Well, I think what we're finding as we go to global cities and we're advising them that all the mayors in these global cities really want to be the technology mayor. They don't really know what that means, but from our perspective, what we did with Michael Bloomberg was to use technology within government to improve services, provide transparencies, and better communications. But externally, there was the recognition that that's where the new economy is and where the new jobs are. So mayors need to understand holistically how to support the tech sector, infrastructure, education, and of course marketing is so important. And so we are consulting with Mayor Boris Johnson here in London, and we held a tech summit last June because Boris wants to imagine London as a great digital city. And so our work is centered around that cause. And so it's really helpful for me to even hear all of this today and to take this report and share with the folks at the GLA so that we can look at different strategies to increase awareness. But I really still believe, and I go back back to that it's the marketing campaign. It's important to have different organizations involved, but I think we have to, change impressions and perceptions, and that we can do that through a very robust marketing campaign and using social media effectively.
Thank you.
Just one last thing, and it's a particular thing of frustration, an error, I think, that can help on this. A lot of engineering companies that we're talking about, STEM-type companies, are traditional, if you like, their products are, and the engineers and the scientists that work on them, they worry about the function of that part. There's not many of them that worry about the form of that part. And we're doing a lot of work with the Design Council of the UK, because companies like Philips or companies like 3M, who have a big engineering base, they always have to worry about what their product looks like. And when we're talking about that, and we go to 3M and we go to their Innovation Centre and we go to the Design Council, I have to say the percentage of women in those firms is much higher. Now, I'm not trying to be provocative here, but if, therefore, the traditional engineer started thinking that the link to... It's a bit like when you mentioned STEAM, that the A bit, the form bit of what we do, is just as important and part of the engineer. And it went back to the professor's paper about marketing, that engineering is bigger than just the engineering, because the thing's got to be sold, the thing's got to get out there. If we can begin to join that as part of this, I think that's another way in for more women to be part of it.
Okay.
But that's my particular view.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the panellists. Thank you so much to you as well. I apologise that you didn't all get to ask your questions, but thank you very much for the valuable contributions that we did get. Thank you.
Thank you.